Yo, this is Danny Echevarria with theproaudiofiles.com, and in this video I'm going to be looking at some ways to make vocals sparkly and bright without having them get too harsh. This topic is somewhat inspired by some things that have come up recently in the Pro Audiophiles Mix Critique Forum, which, shameless plug, Pro Audiophiles members right now can submit mixes that they are working on to get feedback from none other than yours truly. That's available only to our members, so if that interests you, go check that out on the proaudiofiles.com website. Plug over. Let's look at some ways to get vocals nice and bright without being too harsh using dynamic EQ. And you'll see why dynamic EQ is a helpful tool for this sort of thing as we get through the video. For this video, I'm going to be using the Tokyo Dawn Labs TDR Nova, which if you're saying, man, I don't have a dynamic EQ, are you going to tell me I have to buy some plugin? No, I'm not, because this plugin is free. You can get this for free. And there's a strong chance that your DAW also has a stock option for dynamic EQ anyway, but if it doesn't, then you can get this one, and it's a great feature-loaded EQ in addition to being free. So before we get into what I'm going to do with this, let's just take a listen to the song. This is another one by Zach Jones. This is probably the last video I'll do off stuff we did for this album of his that I mixed recently. Check it out.
Yeah, I'm leaving this town for a while. You may notice a change in my style. Pack my troubles, my bags, and my smile. For now I'm gone.
So Zach is a great singer, but this vocal sounds like it could use a little love to me. So let's look at what I would do with an EQ like this. The first thing is I'm gonna high pass filter up to about 150 hertz. This sort of filtering is not really going to affect the tone of the vocal. This is just some best practices kind of cleanup. There's going to be some rumble and mud down below there. I checked before choosing this cutoff that the vocal doesn't actually go below, like the notes of the vocal don't go below 150 hertz. So if your ears happen to find the changes that I make to this vocal to make it sound too thin or something, just know it's not because of the filter. But hopefully you like what I do. I think what I'm going to do is cool. So anyway, enough of that. Let's start with just a big fat high shelving boost. And I'm going to make it real extreme. I'm going to make it 15 dB and I'm going to do the cutoff at 10 kilohertz. Let's see how this sounds.
Yeah, I'm leaving this town for a while. You may notice a change in my style.
So, whoa, a lot brighter. Real quick, A-B.
Yeah, I'm leaving this town for a while. You may notice a change in my style.
So we're moving in the right direction. I like the sparkle, I like the silk, I like the presence. What I don't like is that I boosted 15 dB to get here. So yes, there are no hard and fast rules in mixing and audio production. If something works, then do it. The mix police are not going to arrest you for boosting too much, but there's reasons that I don't like doing big boosts like this. The first one is that with big boosts, you have a tendency to just make things louder by doing that, and our ears want to like things more when they're louder. So there's I worry when I do huge boosts on something that then when I'm like, oh yeah, it sounds great, then it's like, well, yeah, you just made it louder. So that's one reason to not trust giant boosts on things. And the other reason is that if you applied that strategy across the board to your whole mix, where you're, just making things sound better by boosting them and then making them louder by doing that, then you're going to start running out of headroom. And if you do it to everything in your mix, you might even start scraping the ceiling or clipping your master, which please don't clip your master. It matters. Don't clip your master. So for those reasons, I tend not to like doing gigantic boosts, but think of it this way. If I'm boosting the high end, 15 dB, I'm boosting it relative to the lower stuff down here, like the low mids. I could do a smaller boost on the high end and then cut the low mids a little bit. And I'm keeping the same sort of relationship, but without raising the overall level of the track quite so much. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this boost down to 9 dB. And then I'm going to do a dynamic cut in the low mid range. Let's say like 300 Hertz, and tighten up the Q a little bit, and then activate the dynamic function here. So I'm looking for maybe like 3 dB of attenuation. I'm going to play it back and dial the threshold while I do this.
Yeah, I'm leaving this town for a while. You may notice a change in my style. Pack my troubles, my bags, and my smile. For now, I'm gone.
All right, so not only has that kind of lowered the lower mid-range relative to the sparkly high-end stuff, but it actually kind of cleans up a little bit of mud that as I'm dialing it, I'm noticing the vocal plays along a little better with the strings, which are the fundamental notes of the string part are kind of sitting in the same range as the vocal. So it's sort of negotiating the vocal into the mix a little more smoothly. Let's do a quick A-B. So here it is bypassed. I'll turn it back on as I play back.
Yeah, I'm leaving this town for a while. You may notice a change in my style.
So I like where this is going. It's less muddy, it's more sparkly, but around this time, you may find that your vocals start getting a little bit harsh. This vocal is not recorded too harshly, although there is some upper mid stuff that I don't like. And depending on what sort of mic your vocal was recorded with, especially if it was done with like a cheaper condenser, you might start noticing some harshness at this point. So I'm going to do another dynamic cut. I'm going to do a dynamic cut centered around 3K. And by the way, when I talk about harsh high mid-range, we're really looking at like 2K to 5K. Sometimes it's a little outside of that range, but that's dependably where the harsh stuff lives. So I'm doing a dynamic cut because while the upper mid-range is responsible for the harshness, it's also kind of responsible for the presence, as well as particularly with a vocal, the clarity of it, like the intelligibility of speech lives up around that region. So I don't want to go to town too hard on just like taking 3K out. I want to be a little bit more measured with it. So that's where the dynamic EQ aspect comes into it, because it's just going to take it out when it's too much. That's what I want. So dynamic EQ, going to lower the threshold. I'll have to dial this more specifically once it's playing back. Tighten the Q again. So I'll play it back and I'm going to finish dialing this up.
Yeah, I'm leaving this town for a while. You may notice a change in my style. Pack my troubles, my bags, and my smile. For now, I'm gone.
So that gave me just about 3 dB of attenuation at the most. Let's take a listen to a quick before and after. I'm going to bypass this whole EQ, and then I'll bring it back in.
Yeah, I'm leaving this town for a while. You may notice a change in my style. Pack my troubles, my bags, and my smile. For now, I'm gone.
Let's do an A-B one more time, but to my ears, this is sounding like we're getting sparkle, we're getting air, but it never sounds harsh to my ears, which that was the whole goal. One more time without, and then I'll turn it back on.
Yeah, I'm leaving this town for a while. You may notice a change in my style.
So that dynamic cut at 3K is sort of the most subtle ingredient in this whole EQ recipe, but it can be really important, especially if your starting vocal is like more shrill than this one is. And you know, with this dynamic cut, tonally, we could probably get away with doing that 15 dB boost on the high shelf. Screw it, let's just try it.
Yeah, I'm leaving this town for a while. You may notice a change in my style. Pack my troubles, my bags, and my smile. For now, I'm gone.
So for the reasons that I outlined earlier regarding headroom and all that, I still don't really love big boosts. But if I really felt like I needed that 15 dB boost, this matching high mid dynamic cut is a good way to do a big boost like that without having it get out of hand. Okay, that's it. This is a pretty simple trick, pretty simple way to approaching EQing vocals, but it can go a really long way to getting a sparkly, silkier sounding vocal. I'm sure you guys have some other tricks for getting vocals to sound nice and sparkly and bright. There are many more complex and just as simple as this one, and I would love to hear about what you guys do. Tell me in the comments. But for now, that's it. Once again, I am Danny Echevarria with theproaudiofiles.com. If you liked what you saw in this video, please subscribe to the Pro Audiophiles on YouTube. And if you're interested in mix critiques, go check that out on the website. Until next time, happy mixing. Peace.